adidas Ubersonic 2 or adidas Ubersonic 3? Which one deserves your money? Let's find out. Hey everybody, it's Zach, and tonight it's a head-to-head matchup of minimalist tennis shoes. With Adidas earlier this year relaunching the Ubersonic 2, it begs the question, is the Ubersonic 2 just that popular, or is the Ubersonic 3 just not up to snuff? And if you're new to the channel, every week I review new tennis shoes from my perspective as a former tennis pro and current foot doctor. So if you don't want to miss the latest in tennis tech, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell, that way you don't miss a thing. So to compare the Ubersonic 2 and 3s, first we're going to inspect them, then put them through the play test, including the side-by-side, serve, suicide, and infrared test. We're going to go through the pros and cons, and ultimately see which one is worth your money, if either of them. So let's start with the Ubersonic 2s. The first thing I noticed about these shoes is the fit. Now the Ubersonic 2s do have a slipper tongue and actually a pretty narrow entry into the shoe. However, the last is only slightly inflared, actually pretty straight. Combined with the elastic, after about a half hour, my pretty wide foot did start to break these in. However, for that first half hour, they were feeling pretty snug. Arguably the best thing about the Ubersonic 2s is the weight, only 12.9 ounces. So what makes the construction of the Ubersonic 2s really interesting to me is they are what I would call a minimalist tennis shoe. They are mostly mesh and elastic. However, they do have little pops of reinforcement in just the right areas to keep them stable enough to play high-level tennis. Number one is the external heel counter, that outrigger heel counter. If you've watched any of the videos on this channel, you'll know I'm a huge fan of these. I think they keep you really stable. Number two, they have these plastic tongue and ankle collar reinforcements. Now that's kind of similar to the Nike Air Tech Challenges back in the day. However, these are a much lighter shoe than that. You also have some reinforcements up in the medial toe box, and then on the outsole of the shoe, you actually have one little pad here in the arch to hold your arch up a little bit. Typically these are 1 or 2 piece outsoles. This one has a 3-piece outsole, and this one right here, this pad, is actually designed to keep your arch up. I actually would have liked it if they would have extended that laterally into the flange. I think that was a little bit of a design mistake. They really missed an opportunity there. But having that here does give you a little more arch support versus just having this minimalist mesh shoe. Now the next part about this shoe I actually find really interesting are the shoelaces. Now typically I don't like this kind of eyelet design where it's slightly off center. However, what you see in the Ubersonics is that the eyelets come down pretty low on the medial side into the arch. That's another design to help these shoes stay stable without sacrificing weight, because if the laces are going down lower, you're going to catch more of the arch and make the shoe a little more stable. I would have liked for them to not have had these eyelets in here. I don't like these very much. I think they just decrease the stability. I wish they would have gone into the upper. However, the eyelets down here, which has some reinforced sewing, which is great, really do make the shoe a little more stable going side to side versus if this were just a traditional lacing system in which I think maybe this elastic would have moved a little too much moving side to side on the court. Now the one thing I really didn't like about these shoes was how my ankle felt moving side to side. You'll notice again, slipper tongue and a really thin tongue at that. Also the heel counter, although it does go up pretty high and gives you that slipper or glove-like feeling, it's super flimsy. The only stable piece you have is the heel counter, the external outrigger heel counter. So everything up here will move. Now, I'm not saying these are gonna cause ankle sprains by any means, but if you are prone to ankle sprains, I'm not so sure that these are your shoe. Now the Ubersonic 2s do have a varying herringbone for the outsole tread. Now in theory this would make them pretty good for clay. However, it is a stamped herringbone, which means there is this outline of rubber, this continuous outline on all 3 of the pads. Now the reason I don't like that is because you need that herringbone to go all the way across the shoe to really dig into the clay. If the clay is very well maintained, I think these will be okay for you. The herringbone does go from wide to narrow in certain areas, especially under the big toe joints, so that you can pivot on a hard court. So, like I said, even though it's herringbone, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be great for clay. It has to be a chunky, deep herringbone to make it a clay-specific shoe or a good shoe for clay. The first time I put the Ubersonics on, I found them really plush. The midsole foam actually was pretty nice. However, when I go to twist them, I mean, they just twist way too easily. So I think for durability-wise, these probably aren't going to be the most durable midsoles that you'll put on in your life. They will feel pretty comfortable and plush, But like I said, if I can do this, that means that after a little bit of wear, your foot's gonna be able to do that too. All right, so now looking at the Ubersonic 3s. If you'll notice, same thing, slipper tongue entry. The only difference on the 3s versus the 2s is that it's a hybrid slipper tongue with these two pieces of material on the medial and lateral side jutting out to make a hybrid 3-piece tongue. So you get the slipper-like entry of the 1-piece plus the security of the 3-piece. The next thing is the Ubersonic 3s are also pretty much a straight last, which I love. Now, the one difference of the 3s versus the 2s is that the 3s, the lateral flange is bigger, the shoe toe box and forefoot is just a little bit wider. Now, the upper construction of the Ubersonic 3s I just find so interesting. You have a woven cross-stitched upper, which means you have 2 layers of the upper. One is the slipper tongue and one is that overlapping layer that makes the 3-piece tongue. Now, if you'll look here, there's all this different cross-stitching on the upper. Now, these are in different directions, and what that does is those different directions of cross-stitching make it a little more stable without sacrificing weight. Now, I will say when I was playing in these, I did notice that this being a little more of a minimalist upper, it definitely was not as stable as something like the Court FF2s, which have a lot of foxing and which the uppers are a lot heavier. What surprises me about the Ubersonic 3s is that Adidas markets it as a stripped down or more minimalist tennis shoe. Now, they weigh 14.3 ounces. That's just not the weight of a shoe that I would consider a stripped down, bare bones, or minimalist tennis shoe. Now on the Ubersonic 3s, you do have some reinforcement on the medial side, just like the Ubersonic 2s. However, you really only have this little cap on the toe box, so if you do slide on hard courts a lot, or if you're just a slider in general, these definitely are not going to be a durability shoe for you. As you can see on the 2s, much more reinforcement on the toe cap versus the Ubersonic 3s. Now the shoelace eyelets are also a little bit staggered on the Ubersonic 3s. They definitely don't go down as far, and they do have these external eyelets, which I don't like. Anytime you have an external eyelet, you're just decreasing the stability of the shoe. It's really better off if they're all just built into the upper like these are up here. Now, one thing about the Ubersonic 3s I will tell you is the heel counter is definitely not as solid. It is an internal heel counter. You can actually see the outrigger heel counter here. However, this is basically just like pressed wax. It's not gonna do much for stability. I will say when playing with the Ubersonic 3s, I did notice that my heel was coming up a tad on my right foot. And even though it is a slipper tongue and it should keep your foot pretty secure in the heel, I did notice that mine was just coming up just a tad. And remember, when you have that excessive motion in your heel, if you have something like Achilles tendonitis or plantar fasciitis, that is going to exaggerate those symptoms. Just like the Ubersonic 2s, in the 3s, I did notice that there just wasn't as much ankle stability in these shoes versus some more of the durability focused shoes or some more of the stability focused shoes we've seen this year. So if you are prone to ankle sprains, I really don't think that this would be your shoe. Now, I will say these shoes did feel a little more solid in the midsole. I still can just twist them any which way I want. So the midsole is definitely not going to be a durability focused midsole. Now the outsole tread on the Ubersonic 3s is very reminiscent of the 2s, except it's a 1-piece outsole. Now you still have this flat herringbone underneath the big toe joint for pivoting on a hard court and gripping of a hard court. Now, if you have a really high arched foot where you kind of walk on the outside of your foot or run on the outside of your foot, you're gonna notice there's that stamp again on the outside tread. So if you play on clay and you got a high arched foot or a C-shaped foot, and you might have some trouble staying stable. The one critique that I will give this herringbone is that it's kind of a more shallow herringbone than some of the deeper grooves you'll see on shoes that are really meant for clay courts. My hypothesis for the suicide test was that the Ubersonic 2s would be a little faster, so I made sure to do the suicide test with the 3s first.
So as kind of I suspected from play testing in these shoes, my ankle just felt really wobbly. I don't know if you noticed, but right when I came off the blocks, that second step I took, I actually almost tripped. Now, it did feel really stable on the lateral flange. I did not feel like I was gonna roll there, but I almost felt like my ankle was rolling within the shoe. And so we'll check out what the numbers say on the suicide test, but I can just say, did not feel very stable doing that test. Time for the 2s. Now the 2s, my ankle did not feel like it was rolling at all. I did feel a little bit of slippage on one part of the court. However, you can see the clouds. It actually is a little more muggy out today, maybe a little more damp. So that may have also been a reason for a little bit of slippage, but felt way more stable in the 2s and the 3s on that suicide test, especially when making turns. All right, side by side test. Here we go. So one thing I can tell right away is the weight difference. My right foot feels so much lighter than the left. You can really tell the difference in these shoes. So the next thing I'm noticing is that center pad on the outsole is really giving me some decent arch support on the Ubersonic 2s. On the 3s, since it's more of a minimalist shoe, that woven slipper tongue and that booty, I do feel like I'm getting into more of a foot flat position and that maybe my muscles in the leg are just gonna strain just that tad bit more. Now, it's not enough to cause me any pain, but on my right foot, I can really feel that nice, solid arch support, whereas I can't feel it on the left on the 3s.
Serve test showed 28 centimeters for the 2s and 27 centimeters for the 3s, showing that the polyurethane midsole in both of these shoes does give you some pretty good energy return.
Now, probably the most surprising thing that I found out when doing the side-by-side test is that the Ubersonic 2s, even though they are a little more narrow than the 3s, all that narrowness is based on elastic material. The plastic pieces that give it support are not in areas that'll bother my wide foot. So the material really feels like it's enveloping my foot and moving with me. Whereas on the Ubersonic 3s, yeah, they are wider, but the material, that cross-stitching, almost kind of just feels like cardboard on the shoe. And it feels like it's not really doing much for me. It's not helping me move side to side or front to back. Whereas in the Ubersonic 2s, that elastic kind of feels like it's giving me almost a little bit of like a slingshot into the ball. That might be mental because it feels good, but hey, look good, feel good, play good.
For the infrared test, we had an on-court temperature of 86.7 degrees. The Ubersonic 2s rose 20 degrees in 30 minutes, and the Ubersonic 3s 19 degrees in 30 minutes. Neither of these were as breathable of shoes as you would have thought for a minimalist shoe.
So what are the pros and cons of both of these shoes? Well, I'll start with the 2s. The pros of this shoe is the elastic upper, I think, really feels nice. Number 2, the outrigger heel counter. And number 3, the midsole. Even though in the beginning of the video I said that it was a little flimsy, they're not durability focused shoes. They're meant for speed, they're meant for more performance. And when I have them on, I do feel nice and bouncy in them, and they do give me enough support. So I'd say all 3 of those are really good pros of the shoe. I'd say the cons, number 1, the slipper tongue. I just don't like slipper tongues. Number 2 is the laces on the outside of the shoe. I just don't think that that's gonna hold tension as well as some other shoes. And number 3, the last is straight, but they are just a tad narrow. If they would just make them a little more wide, I think you'd really have an elite shoe. All right, now for the pros and cons of the Ubersonic 3. I think the cons of this shoe, number 1, the lacing system. You just can't get enough tension in them. Number 2, the heel counter. You just can't get a snug enough fit of your heel in there for my taste. Number 3, the fact that it's a slipper tongue. And the biggest con of this shoe, although I love it in theory, is the cross stitching in the upper. It just felt too much like cardboard on my foot. So even though really cool idea, I think it might need worked a little bit more in the workshop and in the lab. Now, a big difference for you tennis players that wear orthotics in your shoes, the Ubersonic 2s will really have no problem fitting in orthotic. However, the Ubersonic 3s with that heel counter, how I was kind of coming out of it even with no insert in there, you add any bulk into there whatsoever and you might get a little issue. So these might not be the best shoes for somebody who wears orthotics. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think? 2 or 3? So for the pros of the Ubersonic 3, I think that if you have a wide foot and you really want a slipper tongue, this is a pretty good hybrid mixture. You do get the slipper tongue, the wide lateral flange, and the hybrid collars on both sides. So where do I think you should spend your money? Well, interestingly enough, when I took them out of the box, I thought I was gonna like the 3s. However, after playing in them, I gotta say, I think the Ubersonic 2s are just a gem of a performance tennis shoe. I don't think that they're gonna be as durable as some other shoes in the market. So if you're looking for a shoe to last you a long time, this is not it. However, if you're looking just for more performance and speed, The Ubersonic 2s are really quite a great shoe in my opinion.
I think another big reason why I like the Ubersonic 2s more than the 3s when I was playtesting them is this outrigger heel counter. I think you just get a lot more stability versus an internal heel counter, and even though the heel is wider on the 2s, I just felt a little more stable having a hard piece of plastic on the outside, especially because both of these shoes are slipper tongue elastic shoes. You kind of need these pops of plastic on the outside to make the shoe stable. And even though you get the cross stitching in the 3s, maybe a little bit wider of a flange in the 3s, the 2s I think just had that plastic in the right spots to make me just feel a little more confident with my movement.
The Ubersonic 3s, I really feel like they kind of fit a puzzle piece that just doesn't exist. They are a stripped down shoe, but they're still kind of heavy, right? So they're a slipper tongue shoe that doesn't fit your foot like a glove.
Another big difference between the 2s and the 3s is that my heel wasn't coming out of the 2s ever. It kept my heel really snug in the shoe. So I never had to think about that. Versus in the 3s, I feel like my heel came up and then the shoe came up a little bit. And that really didn't stop even after I tied that back eyelet and I tried one of the cat's cradle type shoelace techniques. And that helped a little bit, but not enough to make me feel really confident when jutting out after a ball. And when you're buying a lightweight, speed-focused shoe, you really shouldn't have to be thinking about, is this shoe gonna move with me? It should just go.
So for me, I think I'm glad Adidas did bring back the Ubersonic 2s, because I think that probably players were just telling them that this really wasn't broke, so don't fix it. Until the next shoe, everyone have a great week wherever you're tuning in from. I'll see you next time.